Alright everyone, Cowboy Trades here. Welcome back to the channel for a super quick update on JASMY. So, since our last video 2 or 3 days ago, where we detailed what was happening in the charts and what was happening with the news regarding Binance and JASMY, we have got some nasty continuation down to the downside, and in the lower time frames we found a slight level of support. So, I'm going to detail what's happening with these patterns that are developing right now, what are my price targets, and what do I think is going to happen while JASMY is sitting at this level of support. Let's dive right into this, starting off with the lower time frames and work our way up. So one of the major charts we talked about in our last videos was what was happening with this regular bearish divergence. Now, of course, this divergence started to come into fruition, and then as Binance basically, moved JASMY over to the innovation zone, we pretty much absolutely got destroyed from this level. Now, considering how far we've dropped since this divergence has been playing out, it's fair to say that, this regular bearish divergence may be pretty much complete, especially as the MFI is around about 30 right now and coming down to support around about the 20 to 15 region where we found support previously on for JASMY. So I don't particularly expect this bearish divergence to continue having much more of an effect. There's no other divergences that I really want to focus on too much. So let's dive into our next few charts. This is where things get interesting. We've obviously been detailing this SFP chart, the swing failure pattern chart. Basically, we've been trading within this range for 95% of the time for the past, well, really since back here of the 1st of October 2022. We've just been trading within this range. Anytime we have an SFP, a swing failure pattern, we have a knee-jerk reaction. We have a swing failure pattern, knee-jerk reaction, SFP, knee-jerk reaction, SFP. As you can see, we had a brutal knee-jerk reaction. So it's probably about time, considering how we've had multiple macro rejections. You can see we've got these two major ones here, and what happened within these, as you can see, we obviously had one big rejection followed by one smaller rejection. Over here we had one smaller rejection followed by one bigger rejection, but really we're looking at these two major SFPs, which is pretty much going to correlate to this nasty double top structure. Now, we're going to talk more about what this pattern is in a second, but as you can see, we are coming right down to this blue box of support right now. So just before we talk about what this blue box is, I do expect us to come back down to the bottom of these range lows and break beneath this previous range low structure, which would be indicative that we could see JASMY breaking beneath 0.0034. But what happens next, and what is this blue box and this green trend line that I've got drawn out? Well, let's head over to our next chart where we'll specify. As you can see, if we do come over to the weekly time frame, we've got multiple rejections that have played out on the bull market support bands here. We are having a bearish engulfing candle underneath the bull market support bands. If we clear these up, you can see this correlated to a double top in the price action, double top on this range high, double SFP pattern, and a double top in terms of these EMA ribbons. Now, if we clear up all of these different things, get rid of this, get rid of this over here, what does this look like now we're on a pretty much clean chart? Well, as you can see, we've got a support line formed out here. You've got touch points, you've got touch points, you've got touch points, and you can drag this back a little bit further to encompass these data points. Well, I want to focus on this range right here. What does this look like? This is a massive, massive M pattern. And if we take the price target of this M pattern from the breakdown, you can see this could potentially mean JASMY could come all the way down to 0.0021 cent. Now, there are a few last lines in the sand, and we have not yet confirmed this breakdown. So if I clear up these boxes, if we're just focusing on the M pattern, the neckline is right here at 0.0042. And if you're leaning a little bit more bullish, you might be, wanting to say, okay, I want to draw another trend line, so I've got an even further last line in the sand. And then you could potentially say, hey, if we come down in the next few days, 0.004 is going to be a more accurate level to draw from. You could also then say, hey, I want to look at a Fibonacci last line in the sand. There's a few last lines in the sands you can draw from, low to high. We have a 786 Fibonacci right here at 0.00395. So all in all, Like I said, I'm really keeping my eyes on this horizontal box, which starts to, obviously mean we're going to be having a breakdown at 0.0043. If you're a little bit more bullish or you want to draw a few more last lines in the sand for Jasmy before you potentially trade this market, if you do see us come down to the 786 Fibonacci and break beneath 0.00395, especially if we then back trace these data points and continue breaking down, it's pretty much unarguable at that point that we are obviously violating all of those last lines of support. So that's pretty much what I've got. As you can see, this is what we've got this green box of support drawn out from. This orange line at the bottom is the 786 Fibonacci. If you drop beneath this, this M pattern is pretty much going to be absolutely confirmed in my opinion. Now, if we do come over to let's come over to the weekly time frame. Just before we do detail this, I do obviously want to also talk about the fact while we are seeing an M pattern in the price action, we're seeing a potential M pattern in the stochastic RSI, double top with a lower high on the stochastic RSI. We've had a bearish cross and we are starting to head down. Now, as you can see, if we look at the previous time, we came all the way up here for the stochastic RSI. We topped all the way up at 0.0084 and melted to the downside. If we go back another data point, when we had a nasty bearish cross, and I'm looking at bearish crosses above the 80 line, we had a cross, we broke down, dead cat bounce, double topped on the stock, and absolutely melted down. So the stochastic RSI bearish crosses on the weekly time frame for Jasmy normally mean we have a very, very ugly move coming in, and we're still round about 78 on average for both of these moving averages, so we've got lots of room to move down. Now, let's get rid of the stock. Let's get rid of the bull market support bands. We already talked about those. If we come over to the daily, you can see we actually have just come down. We haven't filled it, but we've come down to one of these pools of liquidity on the liquidity swings for the Lux algo. Now, there's only a small amount of liquidity trapped here, but what I really want to do is now zoom out and show you, if I clear this up, clear up the liquidity swings, you can see we had a major wick down to these lows over on Bybit. Now, if we pull up the liquidity swings, you can basically see we've got a plethora of trapped liquidity all in this range over here. So if I draw this to round about here, if you're a market maker, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to profit from the most amount of volatile swings in the market. You're going to want to make sure that you recover that trapped liquidity and you trade between ranges where liquidity can be provided for the markets and you can make the most money off that. So this green box down here looks extremely enticing for market makers. We've obviously come down to this. We're finding a tiny bit of support because this is the neckline of a very, very macro M pattern, which has literally been developing since the start of 2023. So this is a huge structure. Don't expect for us to just, instantly nuke through the floorboards. That's not what I'm saying. We can spend a little bit of time round about these structures, finding support, etc., before we do decide whether we are going to break down or not. But in general, it's not looking too healthy at these levels that we are at right now. Now, if I take it back a step, if we clear up these, come over to the 4-hour time frame, I don't particularly see any patterns that are of major significance. All I really want to highlight is obviously since we've been topping out, we've been breaking down and stair stepping, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. Now, I continue to expect for this to continue to play out. You can also potentially say, hey, especially as from this data point, we haven't even come up to the 618 Fibonacci, you might want to say something like, hey, we may be developing a bear flag right now. It's not the most beautiful one. Nonetheless, this is still completely valid. And if you do watch my content, I really don't like to base any analysis whatsoever on really lower time frames. This is just a quick idea. I do just in general want to point out the fact that we are making lower lows and lower highs, and I continue to expect for us to stair step. Now, if we come over to the daily, this is where something a little bit more significant might start to play out. So like I said, 4-hour time frame, not really too interested to start drawing potential bear flags, but on the daily, we have something a little bit different. We do have a bear flag. Well, I say bear flag, this really hasn't started to come into fruition yet. You can definitely see pole 100%. This could be 100% forming, or have already formed a pole of a nasty bear flag. And I'm obviously not saying, something like this we have to break out immediately. What I am saying is we could potentially just remain range bound for a little bit of time. We can bounce a little bit further from the structure that we are on right now. We may see, something like this develop before we do have that next leg to the downside for JASMY. So even though we're bearish, we're sitting at support. Why do I think it's possible we could remain a little bit range bound with this dead cat bounce for a little bit longer? Well, let's come over to Bitcoin quickly. Now, Bitcoin has quite recently rejected from this major support box, which was the support/distribution support all the way at the top of the previous bull run. We've quite recently come into this and rejected from this, but we're sitting above the 200-week moving average. So this tight range that Bitcoin is currently in, between 28,000 to 26,000, until we have a major decisive move up above 28,000 or down beneath 26,000, I expect the markets to remain relatively choppy. If Bitcoin breaks beneath 26,000, then, you can basically throw this potential bear flag out the window because, if Bitcoin breaks 26,000 on Monday, boom, it's not going to develop, it's not going to happen. If Bitcoin just remains range bound, potentially bounces a little bit on Monday, rejects from 28K, comes back down to 26, just chops and chops and chops before we do have that next leg down, you could absolutely see something like this develop for JASMY, where we do have this bear flag take place. So for right now, in the lower time frames, I wouldn't really be wanting to predict something like this. In the higher time frames, I'm absolutely very comfortable with predicting these lower moves to the downside. But in the higher time frames, we should really be keeping our eyes on Bitcoin and waiting for that decisive move beneath 26,000 or above 28,000 before you obviously start opening any trades for JASMY or anything of that sort. Now, I'll keep you up to date as soon as, if Bitcoin does break beneath 26,000, I will get a new video out for Bitcoin and JASMY for you. But yeah, that's really what I see developing in the lower time frames. Lower lows, lower highs. That's the only thing you should focus on. So higher time frames, obviously, if you're a veteran of the channel, you'll know my price targets, but what are they in case you're new? Before we talk about that, JASMY BTC. As you can see, since our last video, we have had a major move back down. We are having a dead cat bounce right now, so the price target hasn't changed. We have broken down from this nasty bear flag, and I do proceed to expect a further 42% drop. What are my price targets for JASMY USD? Well, as we've been discussing, this macro Elliott wave theory is still playing out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We should be in that final 5-wave correction. And if we are looking at, very lower time frames, we should obviously expect a new 5-wave correction to start taking place from here. So we haven't started moving down too much, so I think in the macro, we've got a little bit more room to move down before we start a new wave count. Something like this, taking us down to new bear market lows for JASMY. So what are those specific targets? Well, the M pattern breakdown we highlighted earlier, the price target for that is around about 0.002. And if we zoom out a little bit further, let's go over to the monthly time frame and just clear up this Fibonacci, just so we've got these ones over here that I want to focus on. These are the fib targets I've been talking about. We've got a double 1.236 Fibonacci between the regions of 0.0015 down to 0.0014, and also down here, the psychological level 0.001. These are my price targets, but in the immediate short term, let's focus on the M pattern. This is a further 56% move down for JASMY. This is all very hingent on if JASMY does manage to break beneath the M pattern zone down here, the neckline at 0.0042. And like I said, let's not get hasty. Let's keep our eyes on Bitcoin. We're currently trading beneath quite a tight range, and we may see chop for the next week while Bitcoin decides what to do when it's ranging between 28 and 26,000. Don't jump the gun on anything. If you are trading, bear in mind, JASMY has a relatively low market cap compared to other altcoins. And with that being said, if Bitcoin bounces up to 28,000, bounces down to 26,000, bounces up to 28,000 again, and then comes back down, if you are trading JASMY, you may be getting knee-jerked all over the place while we do decide what to do. So I personally will be waiting for a decisive move beneath 26,000 for Bitcoin before, in the lower time frames, you can really start to see this lower time frame TA play out for JASMY. But of course, in the higher time frames, I still do expect these M patterns and breaking beneath these range lows, coming down to these Elliott wave theory targets and also these Fibonacci targets. So for today, my friends, that's all I've got. If you do enjoy my content, as always, let me know down below by leaving a like and a comment. Share the videos with your friends. If you want to further support the channel, feel free to click the join join button and become a member today. Follow me over on Twitter at 618_cowboy. I'll leave it here. It's been your boy Cowboy Trades. I'm out. Peace.